At Thanksgiving, my brother Ryan gave my son a DNA kit to blow up my marriage. But karma is a funny thing, and when the results came back, it was his life, not mine, that got nuked. We were at my parents' opulent place in Austin for the holiday. During the gift exchange, Ryan, my perfect golden child, older brother, handed my husband Liam a small black envelope. Inside was a $50 gas station gift card. Figured you could use this for all the driving you must be doing, Ryan said with a tight smile. Then he turned to my 13-year-old son, Leo, and handed him a sleek, expensive-looking box, a high-end genetic and heritage kit. Ryan ruffled Leo's hair and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Let's see what some real heritage looks like." My blood went cold. It was a clear, twofold attack, a die at our finances, and a malicious implication that my husband's bloodline wasn't pure enough for this family. Or worse, that Leo wasn't even his. I'm Maya. By the way, 37, I'm an architect. My husband, Liam, is a brilliant software developer, and our son Leo is the best kid you could ever ask for. We have a good life, a normal life, and my brother Ryan has always hated us for it. See, Ryan is 40, and he's been the golden child his entire life. He works in luxury car sales, which basically means he gets paid a huge commission to flatter rich people. In my parents' eyes, Ryan can do no wrong. He's the successful one, the charismatic one, the one who carries the family name, and that, of course, made me the scapegoat. You know, the dynamic, if I got an A, Ryan got an A+, or at least he told everyone he did. When I got my architect's license, a huge achievement, Ryan announced he'd broken some regional sales record. My parents, Susan and Robert, threw him a party. It wasn't until years later I found a name for it. This psychological dynamic, the golden child and the scapegoat, it's not just simple favoritism. It's a sickness. The golden child, the one put on the pedestal, is actually living in constant, suffocating terror of failure. They can't ever be wrong, which means someone else always has to be. That was my job. I was the family's problem filter. Ryan's insecurities, my parents' anxieties, any crack in their perfect public image. It all got projected onto me. My career as an architect. Oh, that's a cute hobby. Maya. My husband, Liam, a mere software developer. Not one of them. Ryan's hostility towards Liam was relentless. He'd make these backhanded comments about Liam's salary, his car, his background. He once borrowed a designer handbag from my mom to give to his wife, Chloe, right in front of Liam, saying, "Someone's got to make sure the women in this family are taken care of." Right. The implication was clear. Liam couldn't provide for me the way Ryan could for Chloe. And the worst part, my parents, classic enablers, my mother, Susan, would just laugh nervously and say, "Oh, you know how he is. Maya, he just jokes." My father, Robert, would just clear his throat and change the subject. Anytime I tried to bring up how much Ryan's behavior hurt, it was like I was speaking a different language. They didn't want to hear it, because acknowledging my pain would mean acknowledging that their perfect son, their perfect family, was a complete illusion. So, for years, I just ate it. I swallowed the insults. I smiled at the $50 gift cards. I endured the digs at my husband. I just kept the peace. But that night, holding that DNA kit, something inside me finally snapped. This wasn't just a casual insult. This was a calculated attack, wrapped in a box and handed to my 13-year-old son. That night, after Leo was asleep, Liam and I sat in our living room. The sleek white box was on the coffee table between us like a bomb. Liam, who is the most patient man I have ever met, just stared at it. A $50 gas card. Maya. He thinks I'm his chauffeur. It's not about the gas card. Liam, I said, my voice tight. It's this. I tapped the DNA kit. He's not just calling you poor. He's calling me a cheater. Liam looked up, and I saw the hurt in his eyes. He's implying Leo isn't mine. Of course he is. I shot back, the anger finally boiling over. Leo has my eyes, not yours. Ryan's been making those little comments for years. Genetics are so funny, aren't they? You just never know what you'll get. He's not clever. He's just malicious. I stood up. I couldn't sit still. I was vibrating with a rage I had held down for almost 40 years. He wants to plant a seed of doubt. He wants you to look at Leo and wonder. He wants to destroy us. Just because we're happy and he's whatever he is. Liam was quiet for a second. Then he said, "So what do? We do the test?" I said. My voice was suddenly calm. Cold. Leo's been curious about this stuff anyway. He thinks it's science. So, we'll treat it like science. We'll do the test. And when it comes back, 100% confirming you are his father, I'm going to frame the results. And I'm going to mail them to Ryan. A small smile played on Liam's lips. Okay. Let's do it. Leo was thrilled. He's 13. So he's into genetics and Vikings and all that stuff. He swabbed his cheek, sealed the vial, and was tracking the package online like he was waiting for a new video game to drop. He had no idea about the poison his uncle had tried to inject into our family. A week later, we were at my parents' house for Sunday dinner. The let's pretend Thanksgiving didn't happen meal. Ryan was there with his wife, Chloe, and their kids, 14-year-old Owen and 8-year-old Ava. At the table, Owen, who's a good kid. I'm just curious, like Leo, piped up. Hey, Uncle Liam. Leo told me he did that DNA heritage thing. That's so cool. Can we do one? I want to see if we're related to anyone famous. The reaction was instant and bizarre. Ryan slammed his fork down on his plate. The sound made everyone jump. Absolutely not. He snapped. His voice was so sharp, so full of sudden anger, that the entire table went silent. Owen shrank back. I just thought, it's stupid. Owen, Ryan said, his face flushing red. It's a waste of money and a waste of time. We know our heritage. We're not mixed. He shot a pointed look at Liam. Chloe, his wife, put a warning hand on his arm. Ryan, may God. He was just asking. And I answered. Ryan spat. My mother, Susan, immediately went into fix-it mode. That high-pitched, nervous laugh of hers filled the silence. Oh, Ryan, I don't be such a stick in the mud. I actually think it sounds like fun. A family tree project, you know. I'm going to order some more. I'll get one for you. Ryan. and one for me. We'll all do it together. Won't that be a lovely family activity? Ryan's smile was a mask of pure fury. He looked at my mother like he wanted to strangle her. But he was trapped. He couldn't object without looking even more like a lunatic. Fine. Mom? He bit out. Whatever. Sounds great. I caught Liam's eye across the table. He was just as confused as I was. Why would Ryan, the man obsessed with bloodlines and heritage, be so violently against a test that proved it? But my mother, in her clueless attempt to smooth things over, had just bought 2 more kits, and she had just pulled the pin on a grenade. Weeks crawled by. The initial anger cooled into a low, simmering anxiety. Every day, Leo would check his email. And every day, nothing. Then, on a random Tuesday, I was at work, sketching a blueprint, when my phone buzzed. It was an email from the heritage company. Leo's results were in. My hands were actually shaking. I logged into the portal we'd set up. I clicked through the ancestry breakdown, mostly European, some Eastern Mediterranean, which Leo would think was cool. Standard stuff. Then I clicked the DNA relatives tab. My breath caught. There it was. Top of the list. Liam. Father. 50% match. I dropped my head onto my desk, and a wave of relief, so powerful, it almost made me dizzy, washed over me. It wasn't that I ever doubted it. Not for a second. It was the relief of knowing Ryan's poison had failed. The trap he set for us was empty. I took a screenshot of the results. The beautiful, simple, scientific words, Liam. Father. I texted it to Ryan with a single message. Looks like Leo's heritage is perfectly clear after all. Funny how science works. Who? He didn't respond. I expected a sarcastic comeback. An accusation that the test was fake. Something. But I got nothing. Just complete radio silence. That should have been my first clue that the story wasn't over. The real bomb was still waiting to go off. 3 days later, my phone rang. The caller ID said, "Dad?" I answered cheerfully. "Hey, Dad. What's up?" Silence. Then, a voice I barely recognized. It was my father, Robert. But he sounded hollow, dead. All the air had been punched out of him. "Maya," he said, and his voice was a dry croak. I need you to come over to the house." A cold dread immediately flooded my chest. What's wrong? Is it Mom? Is she okay? Your mother's fine, he said, drawing the word out. Just come over. Now. And Maya. Yeah. Don't bring Liam or Leo. Just you. Come to my study. He hung up. My mind was racing the entire drive over. What could be so bad that he couldn't say it over the phone? Why, just me. I kept replaying his voice in my head. That hollow, empty sound. I'd never heard my father sound like that. He was always so put together. So in control. I parked in the driveway of their huge, quiet house in Westlake Hills. The place I grew up. It usually felt like a museum, but today it felt like a tomb. I let myself in. "Dad," I called out. "In the study?" He answered. His voice was muffled. I walked down the hall, my heart hammering against my ribs. The door to his study was open. He was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, but he wasn't looking at me. He was just staring at a few sheets of paper on his desk blotter. His face was pale, gray, almost Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on? He looked up at me, and his eyes were lost. I got my results, he said. No, not his. He corrected himself. Your mother's results came in. I frowned. Mom's from the DNA kit. Okay. So what? My father, Robert, the enabler, the man who spent 40 years avoiding conflict, looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. Your mother, he said, his voice cracking. She's been lying to me. She's been lying to all of us. For over 40 years. He slid one of the papers across the desk. It was the DNA relatives page from my mother's test. I scanned it, confused. I saw my name, Maya, daughter, 50% match. I don't understand, I said. It says I'm her daughter. What's? Look again, he whispered. Look at the other matches. I scanned the page again, and that's when I saw it. A match for Ryan, son, 50% match. I looked at my dad, completely baffled. Okay, Ryan's her son. I'm her daughter. We already knew that. What is the problem? My dad's hand was shaking as he slid the second piece of paper across the desk. It was his test results, which had apparently also come in. Look at my matches. Maya. I read the page. My eyes darted down the list. I saw my name, Maya, daughter, 50% match. And then I kept looking and looking. Ryan's name wasn't there. There was no match for Ryan. Not as a son, not as a nephew, not as a distant cousin. Nothing. The room went completely silent. I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. What does this mean? I whispered. But I already knew. My father put his face in his hands. It means, he said, his voice thick, that the family's golden child, the heir to the family name, my perfect son. He looked up at me, his eyes full of a lifetime of betrayal. He's not my son. Ryan is not my son. The heritage trap. The one Ryan had so maliciously set for my husband. It had just snapped shut, but it hadn't caught Liam. It had caught Ryan, and my father, and my entire family. Ryan, the man whose entire identity was built on his heritage, his bloodline, the one who looked down on everyone else, was a lie. That study, which had always felt so cold and imposing, suddenly felt like a pressurized cabin about to explode. Susan, Ryan, get in here. My father's voice wasn't a request. It was a roar I had never heard before. My mother, Susan, and my brother, Ryan, walked in, their faces a mixture of confusion and annoyance. Robert, what is it? You're making a scene. My mother started. Ever the social manager. Ryan, seeing me, immediately sneered. What's this? Maya, did you come running to Daddy with some new complaint? My father didn't say a word. He just slid the 2 DNA reports into the middle of his desk. Explain these. Ryan's smug expression didn't falter. He glanced at them. Explain what? It's your stupid tests. Look at them, Robert bellowed. My mother picked up her results first. See? Robert. It says, I'm Maya's mother and Ryan's mother. What's the... Now look at mine. My father said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. My mother's eyes scanned his report. She froze. Her hand went to her throat. She looked at the paper, then at my father, then back to the paper. The color drained from her face. Ryan, seeing her reaction, snatched the paper from her. He read it, and for the first time in his entire charmed life, I saw genuine, cold-blooded panic in my brother's eyes. This is a mistake," Ryan stammered. "These things are wrong all the time." "Right, Mom. It's a lab error." "Is it, Susan?" my father asked, his voice breaking. "Is it a lab error? Or have you been lying to me for 41 years? My mother just crumpled. She fell into one of the leather guest chairs, her face in her hands, and this horrible, dry, sobbing sound filled the room. I don't. It was before we were married," she whispered. "Just before. I always thought he was yours. I convinced myself he was yours." "Who?" my father demanded. "Who was it?" "Susan." But my mother just rocked back and forth, weeping. "He's gone. It doesn't matter. He's dead." My father looked at Ryan, his golden child, his son, with a look of such profound betrayal it was almost physical. "You've built your whole life on my name, on our heritage, the heritage you were so quick to throw in your sister's face." Ryan was cornered. He was pale and sweating. Dad, listen to me. It doesn't change anything. I'm still your son. I've always been your son. It's just biology." "Get out," my father whispered. What Ryan said, "Get out of my house. You're no son of mine." "Dad, no, you can't." Ryan was frantic. And in his panic, he made his second, and much bigger, confession. "You don't understand. I knew." The weeping stopped. My father's head snapped up. "What did you say?" "I knew," Ryan yelled, his voice cracking. "Well, I suspected. A great aunt let something slip years ago. Before she died, I did my own test. I've known for 5 years." The room was dead silent. My father just stared at him. The betrayal had just received a new, sharp blow. "You knew," my father said. "You've known for 5 years? And you said nothing." "I was scared," Ryan pleaded. "I was scared you'd do exactly this, that you'd disown me." And then it clicked. All of it. The constant digs at Liam, the hostility, the obsession with our money, our status. It wasn't just projection. It was panic. You've been draining the family investment fund, haven't you?" I said. It wasn't a question. The words just came out of my mouth, cold and clear as glass. Ryan's head whipped toward me, his eyes wide with a new, animalistic terror. "What are you talking about?" my father asked, looking at me. "The fund, Dad," I said, my mind suddenly working faster than it ever had before. Ryan's been high-flying in a bad car market for years. It never made sense. He was panicked. He knew he was a fraud. And he was building a nest egg. He's been stealing from you. From us. "Ryan?" my father asked. Ryan didn't even try to deny it. He just broke. "I had to. It was my safety net. What was I supposed to do? Let you throw me out with nothing? It's what I deserved." The sheer audacity of it hung in the air. He had been stealing from the family for 5 years. all while accusing my husband of not being good enough to be part of it. And then, the final, pathetic pivot. My mother, Susan, flew out of her chair and grabbed my arm. Air nail dug in. Maya, please. She sobbed. Please. I don't let this happen. He's your brother. Ryan turned to me, his eyes full of desperate, ugly tears. She's right. Maya, please. You have to calm him down. Keep this in the family. Please. Maya, don't let this destroy us. Think of the family. And that was it. That was the moment the old Maya, the scapegoat, the peacekeeper, died. I pulled my arm out of my mother's grasp. I looked at her and at my brother, and I felt nothing, just a cold, hard clarity. Keep the peace, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through their hysterics. I've been keeping the peace my whole life. Do you even know what that means? They just stared at me. It meant that I was the family's poison filter. That's all I was. I was the place you dumped all the dysfunction, all the hypocrisy, all the lies you didn't want to look at. My job was to absorb it all. To smile. To be the problem. So that everyone else could pretend to be perfect. I looked at Ryan. I was the scapegoat for a lie I didn't even know existed. You've been projecting your own fraud onto me and my husband for years. You've made my life hell to cover up your own. I turned to my mother. And you begged me to keep the peace just now. You weren't asking for peace. You were asking me to be quiet. You were asking me to swallow this poison. Too. The biggest one of all, you were asking me to protect him. From the truth. I took a step back. Away from both of them. No. I said. I'm done being your filter. I'm not protecting him. And I'm not protecting you. We're not keeping the peace anymore. We're telling the truth. My father, Robert, just stared at me. The man who had enabled this his entire life was gone. And in his place was someone I'd never seen. He was devastated. Yes. But the fog of denial had been burned away. He looked at Ryan, then at my mother, and then at me, and he saw the truth. My transformation from dormant protector to an agent of justice was complete. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I was just done. I turned to my father. Dad, I said, my voice perfectly level, call the family lawyer. Call him right now. Robert was still in shock. What, Maya? What are you? Call the lawyer. I repeated, and have him pull up the charter for the family investment fund. The one grandfather wrote when he set it up. My father looked completely lost. The charter, what are you talking about? This is about your mother. It's about fraud. Dad, I said. I read that charter last year. I was looking up some old property deeds for an architectural project. Grandfather was old school. He put in a personal conduct clause. I remember it clearly. It states that any beneficiary who commits an act of moral turpitude or fraud against the family is to be immediately and irrevocably removed from the fund. Ryan's head snapped up. The tears were gone. Replaced by that same cold panic from before. You're making that up. You're lying. I didn't even look at him. I just held my father's gaze. Am I? Dad, call the lawyer. Ryan just confessed to knowing he wasn't your son for 5 years. And to systematically draining the fund to build a nest egg because he knew he was a fraud. If that isn't moral turpitude and fraud, I don't know what is. Ryan's theft just triggered it. His $100,000 share? And everything else? A new, terrible light came into my father's eyes. It was the look of a man who had finally been given a weapon. He picked up his phone, his hand trembling, and hit a speed dial. David, it's Robert. I need you to pull the original charter for the family fund. Yes. Right now. Read me Section 9. The Personal Conduct Clause. My father listened for a long, agonizing minuta. Ryan looked like he was going to be sick. My mother was whispering. No. 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 My father's face, which had been gray with grief, hardened into granite. Thank you, David, he said, and hung up. He looked at Ryan. Moral turpitude, my father said, his voice flat, or fraud, resulting in immediate removal and forfeiture of all current and future assets. You did this. Ryan, you triggered it yourself. Dad. No, Ryan lunged forward. Dad, I'm still your son. I'm the one who was here. She left. You're a thief, my father said. You're a liar. And you're a stranger. David is filing the paperwork in the morning. You are officially disinherited. Your $100,000 share is forfeited, and I will be filing a criminal complaint for 5 years of fraud and embezzlement. You will pay back every cent. It was a total annihilation. Ryan just collapsed. He didn't just fall into the chair. He imploded. A sobbing, pathetic mess. The golden child was gone. All that was left was a 40-year-old con man. My mother ran to him, trying to hold him, screaming at my father. Robert, he's your son. He's still our son. You can't do this. He's your son. Susan. My father shot back. The words like bullets. And you enabled this? You lied. You both did. And then the final piece fell. Chloe, Ryan's wife, who had been standing in the doorway, silent, watching this whole nightmare unfold. She just stepped forward. Her face was pale, but she wasn't crying. She looked relieved. She placed her wedding ring on the corner of my father's desk. Ryan, she said, her voice clear and strong. I'm filing for divorce. I'm taking Owen and Ava, and I'm going back to my parents' place, and I will be testifying against you in the fraud case. Ryan's head jerked up, his face a mess. Chloe, you can't. I'm your husband. You're supposed to be on my side. Chloe laughed. A real, bitter laugh. Your side, Ryan. I've known you were draining those accounts for a year. I thought you had a gambling problem. But this is sociopathic. You let me live in fear of financial ruin. All to cover this lie. You were never afraid of losing your father. You were just afraid of losing his money. She looked at me. And you did this. You set me free. Thank you. Maya. She turned and walked out of the study, out of the house, and out of our lives. Ryan was a ruin. He had lost his father, his name, his inheritance, his wife, and his children, all in the span of about 10 minutes. All because he just had to give my son that DNA test. My mother was still weeping, begging my father to fix this. My father looked at her, his face just empty. Fix it, there's nothing to fix. Susan, You will not speak of this to anyone. You will stay in this house. You will not divorce me, because I won't give you the satisfaction. You will live with the public shame of what your son has done, and you will live with my silence for the rest of your life. That is your sentence." He looked at me, the scapegoat, the daughter he had ignored for decades. "Maya," he said, his voice thick. I'm sorry." I just nodded. There was nothing else to say. I turned around, walked out of the study, and left the wreckage of my old family behind. The aftermath was as brutal and efficient as a controlled demolition. Ryan became a social and financial pariah overnight. The criminal complaint for fraud and embezzlement was filed. His accounts were frozen. The luxury car was repossessed. He was buried in legal fees he couldn't pay. And the friends who had flocked to his side when he was the golden child vanished. My mother, Susan, is living out her sentence. She's a ghost in that opulent house. My father, Robert, barely speaks to her. He provides for her. But there is no warmth, no forgiveness. He sentenced her to live with the public shame of what Ryan had done, and with the private knowledge of her own 40-year lie. It was a colder justice than any court could deliver. My relationship with my father is changed. It's strained. And it's quiet. But, for the first time in my life, it's honest. He calls me. He asks about my work. About Liam. About Leo. He's apologized. Twice. For his decades of blindness. He's trying to see the daughter he had, not the scapegoat he needed. My own small family, me, Liam, and Leo, we've never been stronger. The poison that was meant to tear us apart only served to temper us, to make us stronger. We were vindicated. We were whole. Which brings me to 1 year later, today, Thanksgiving. The house is full of noise, and it's warm. The smell of turkey and roasted vegetables is in the air. Leo and Owen are yelling at a video game in the living room. Little Ava is showing Liam her drawings. My parents, Robert and Susan, are not here. They called last week. A stiff, awkward conversation. They were going to manage the situation with Ryan. My mother, in her enabling way, is still trying to fix her broken golden boy. My father, in his weary way, is still cleaning up the financial mess. They chose to spend their holiday with the wreckage, and for the first time in my life, it was okay. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel sad. I just felt free, because my table is full. I'm here. Liam is here. Leo is here. And sitting across from me, pouring a glass of wine and laughing, is Chloe. And her 2 children, Owen and Ava. After the divorce, Chloe and I stayed in touch. We helped her find a lawyer. We helped her move. We testified on her behalf. We became family. I looked at this new, loud, happy, complicated table. None of us were bound by the heritage that Ryan was so obsessed with. We weren't a perfect bloodline. We were just people who had chosen each other. There's a pain that people who have cut off toxic family members rarely talk about. It's the guilt. The world tells you that blood is thicker than water, that you're supposed to forgive, that you're supposed to endure, but they don't tell you what to do when that blood is poison. They don't tell you that sometimes the most courageous act of love is to perform surgery, to cut out the part that's killing you, even if it has your name. I spent my whole life fighting for a seat at a table that was built on a lie. I was so desperate to be one of them that I let them poison me. Looking at my new family. At Chloe, a woman I admire. At Owen and Ava, who are so much happier now. At my son Leo, who is safe. And at my husband Liam, who I love. I realized I was never meant for that old table. By finally letting go of the toxic bloodline my family worshipped, I was finally free to build my own heritage, one based on truth, on loyalty, and on choice. And that is a heritage worth fighting for. Story 2. My brother, Brandon, raised a glass of my best Cabernet to Redwood Creek Vineyard. He beamed at the crowd. Finally, it's family property. His guests, all gathered on my tasting patio, cheered and raised their own glasses. I just stood by the old oak tree, watching him boast. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the court order he was waving around like a trophy was based on a complete and total lie. As he started rambling about his plans for a grand reopening, 2 sheriff's cars crunched up the long gravel path. The celebration was over. It all started a week earlier. My mother Brenda's living room was packed. She'd called an emergency meeting on a Sunday afternoon, which was code for family gossip. Everyone was required to attend. The air in the room was thick and strange, buzzing with an anticipation that didn't include me. My brother, Brandon, and his wife, Heather, I were sitting on the sofa like they were holding court. They were practically glowing, whispering to each other and barely able to contain their excitement. I leaned against the doorframe, sipping my coffee, just waiting. I knew this song and dance. It was never good for me. Thank you all for coming. Brenda began, standing by the fireplace and wringing her hands. She looked so proud. Brandon has some absolutely wonderful news to share with everyone. Brandon stood up, pulling out his phone. He had this fake humble entrepreneur look on his face, the one he used right before he asked for money. Thank you, Mom. As you all know, he started. Heather and I have been looking for a way to save the family legacy. I almost choked on my coffee. His legacy so far consisted of 3 failed startups, all funded by maxing out our mother's credit cards. He launched into this grand speech about Redwood Creek Vineyard, my vineyard, that beautiful land our Uncle Robert left to the family when he passed. He said, his voice dripping with false sentiment. My Uncle Kevin, who was sitting in the corner, frowned. I don't think Robert ever... Brandon just talked right over him. It's a place that should have been for all of us, for our children to make memories. But, as you know, Olivia has been squatting on it for years. Squatting. That was the word he chose. The room turned to look at me. I just stared back, my face blank. What do you mean? Squatting out, Deborah asked. Leaning in. The vineyard Olivia's been using, Mom explained, like she was talking to a child. The one Uncle Robert intended for all of us. She's been living there, running it like it's hers, refusing to share access or profits with the rest of the family. That's not kinda curate, I said quietly. Let me finish. Olivia. Brandon snapped, shooting me a look. The king was speaking. The point is, that property is a family asset. It should have been available for all of us to build something, but Olivia's been territorial about it. She's been hoarding it. He paced in front of the fireplace. A true martyr. She refused to listen to reason. She refused to help me when my last business venture hit a snag. She left me no choice. So, Heather and we decided to take action. He looked at Heather, who picked up the cue perfectly. We filed a lawsuit, Heather said, her voice dripping with pride. A petition. Really? To force the sale of the property. As family members with clear inheritance rights, we had legal standing. Brandon puffed his chest out. Taking over. And the court agreed. 100%. The judge saw right through the capper situation and ordered the property sold at auction to finally settle the estate dispute. He paused for dramatic effect, looking around the room at all the captivated faces, and guess who the highest bidder was? He pointed at himself with both thumbs, a grin splitting his face. We got it. $3.6 million. And the best part, it's worth at least $4.8 million. We saved the family legacy. And we're getting a massive return. The room exploded. My aunts and uncles were clapping. Some even standing. My mother, Brenda, was openly crying, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. Oh, Brandon, I'm so proud of you, she sobbed. You see, he's always thinking of his family. And Brandon is so generous, Heather added, grabbing his arm. He's agreed to let all of us be partners in the new wine label. We're going to rebuild it. A real family enterprise. More applause. They were all calculating their cut. I just watched, my coffee cup warm in my hands. I hadn't said a word. I let the scene play out. A silent movie of their greed. I waited until the clapping died down. And then I spoke. My voice was flat, cutting through the excitement. When exactly do you take possession? Brandon's smile tightened. He was annoyed I was ruining his moment. Friday, he said curtly. 5 days. The sheriff's office is handling the eviction notice. You'll need to be out by Thursday night. Olivia. He looked me up and down. Seriously. I'd start packing if I were you. An eviction notice. I repeated. The words tasted like ash. Oh. Don't be so dramatic. Olivia, my mother said, her voice sharp. All her proud tears were gone, replaced by the familiar sting of resentment. You've had 3 years squatting up there. Rent-free. That's more than generous. It's time to let the real family enjoy it properly. It's time for you to share. I took a slow sip of my coffee. It was cold now. That's interesting, I said, because I didn't receive any eviction notice. Brandon scoffed, waving his hand impatiently. It was filed with the court. Olivia, it's all legal. You'll get served this week. They probably just taped it to the gate. I kept my eyes on him. Was this petition lawsuit? I asked. Filed in Sonoma County Superior Court. His confidence wavered. Just for a second? Yes. Of course. Judge Alistair presiding. Everything is 100% legal and proper. I have the paperwork right here. And the case number. He fumbled for a document in his blazer pocket and rattled it off. Proud of his paperwork. Proud that he'd followed the steps. Why? What are you planning to do? Go down there and fight it. You'll lose. The judge already ruled. It's over. I finally set my coffee cup down on the end table. Excuse me one moment. I turned and walked into the quiet hallway, pulling my phone from my pocket. I could hear their excited chatter firing up again behind me. They were already planning the grand reopening. I dialed. Milavier. Ms. Hayes. Answered on the second ring. Ms. Hayes. It's Olivia. I said, my voice low. I'm at my mother's house. And, apparently, my brother just filed a petition lawsuit against me regarding the Redwood Creek Vineyard. I gave her the case number. I heard the sound of typing, fast and sharp. Hold on, she said. Okay. I see it. Ms. Hayes said after a few seconds. Filed 8 months ago. And... Yep. There's a default judgment. She paused. Olivia, did you ever receive service on this? Were you ever handed papers by a process server? No. I said, this is the first I'm hearing of it. From my brother. In my mom's living room. Then the default judgment is invalid on its face, she said. Her voice hardening. I heard more typing. Let me read the file. Okay. The plaintiff, your brother, claimed the property was inherited family property from a Robert Morrison, who died in... Uncle Robert. I filled in, right, but... Olivia. Robert Morrison didn't own that vineyard. You do. I know. I said, can you prove that she asked? It was the formal, legal question. Yes. I said, I bought it in 2017 for $2.5 million. I have the deed. I have the title insurance. I have the mortgage records, which I paid off 3 years ago. I have paid the property taxes continuously, every year, for 7 years. The county records will show me as the sole owner of record for that entire time. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the phone. Hold on. Ms. Hayes said. Just hold on. I'll be right back. I didn't wait. I clicked off the phone and walked back into the living room. The mood was electric. They were already looking at websites for expensive new bottling equipment. Heather was talking about redesigning the tasting room. Brandon. I said. The room went quiet, all eyes on me. I must have looked pale. Or upset. Brandon's face settled back into a smirk. He thought this was the part where I begged. If you're going to beg to stay, Olivia, save it, he said, holding up a hand. The sale is final. The court has spoken. I'm not going to beg, I said. I'm going to explain to you why you've all just made a terribly mistake. What are you talking about? Heather said. Her voice sharp. The judge ruled on false information. I said, the vineyard isn't family property. Brandon. It never was. I looked around at all of them. Their confused, angry faces. I bought it. I said, in 2017, for $2.5 million. Brandon let out a sharp, barking laugh. It was a reflex. That's absurd. You were 28 years old. You didn't have $2.5 million. You were a glorified coder. I was 28. I corrected him. With a Ph.D. in data science. And I was a senior executive at a tech firm that had just been acquired by a major player. My signing bonus and my vested stocks totaled $4.2 million. I bought the vineyard with cash for most of it. And I never, ever told any of you. Because I knew exactly what you would do. I knew you'd do this. You're lying, Heather said. But the color was starting to drain from her face. You'd have to prove it. Okay, I said. I pulled my phone from my back pocket. Public records are a wonderful thing. I pulled up the Sonoma County Assessor's website. I typed in the address for Redwood Creek Vineyard. The page loaded, and I held it up for all of them to see. Owner of record, Olivia. My full name. Purchase date August 2017. Purchase price $2,500,000. Current assessed value $4,800,000. My Uncle Kevin, who had been quiet this whole time, grabbed the phone from my hand. He stared at the screen, his eyes wide, scrolling. Jesus Christ? Live, he whispered, looking at me. It's true. I took my phone back and looked straight at my brother. His mouth was open. He was shaking his head, trying to make it make sense. So when you filed a petition lawsuit, I said, my voice as cold and flat as a stone, claiming my property was inherited family property. You committed fraud. When you told a judge you had inheritance rights, you committed perjury. The color drained from Brandon's face. He was staring at the phone screen, at the public record. And his reality was crumbling. I paid $3.6 million, he yelled, his voice rising into a panicky squeak. I have the cashier's check. The sale is final, the court said so. The sale is invalid if it was based on fraud. I said calmly. That's insane, Heather shouted. Standing up, the judge ruled. The judge ruled based on the lies you provided. I shot back. And another thing, did you ever properly serve me with notice of this lawsuit? Brandon and Heather just exchanged a quick, guilty glance. I'll take that as a no, I said. So, not only did you lie about ownership, you never properly served the actual owner. The default judgment is invalid on multiple grounds. My phone, which was still in my hand, buzzed again. I looked at the screen. It was Ms. Hayes. 1 second. I said to the room. I answered it. Ms. Hayes. Her voice was tight, professional. Olivia. I found the core of his petition. This is much worse than I thought. I need you to listen to me very carefully. It's fine, I said, looking right at my brother, whose eyes were wide with terror. I'm putting you on speaker. My family should hear this. I tapped the button. The sharp, a clear voice of Miss Hayes filled the entire living room. Olivia. To convince the court of his standing, Ms. Hayes said. To prove this was family property. Your brother submitted a letter of intent as evidence. It was purportedly from your Uncle Robert, gifting the Redwood Creek Vineyard to a so-called family trust. My blood went cold. I found that in his desk. Brandon stammered, looking at our mother. After he passed, it was his wish. No. Mr. Brandon. Ms. Hayes cut in, her voice like ice. It was not. We have a certified copy of Robert's final will. He left Olivia $100,000, which she received. He left you nothing. That letter, Mr. Brandon, is a forgery. The room completely stopped breathing. My mother, Brenda, put her hand over her mouth. To everyone listening in that room, Ms. Eyes continued, and I could picture her in her office, ticking points off on her fingers. Filing a false claim with the court is perjury. That's a felony. But manufacturing evidence, that is forgery. That is aggravated fraud on the court. attempting to seize a $4.8 million asset using that forgery isn't a family dispute. It's a slate of serious, prosecutable felonies. We are talking about wire fraud, possibly bank fraud, depending on how he secured the auction funds. She paused, and the silence was deafening. This is well beyond a civil matter. We are talking about serious, significant prison time. Heather let out a small, choked, gasping sound, like she'd been punched. I am filing an emergency motion to vacate the judgment based on this fraud and the forgery right now. Ms. I said, it will be granted. And Olivia, she said, her voice softening just a fraction. I want you to know, I am now legally and ethically obligated to notify the Sonoma County District Attorney's Office of the forgery and the fraud on the court. I understand. I said, I need you in my office. In an hour. On my way. I said. I ended the call. The living room was silent. Absolutely. Deathly silent. Except for the sound of Heather, who was now crumpled on the sofa, making these awful, high-pitched gasping sobs. Brandon was just frozen, staring at the phone in my hand as if it were a snake. His face was a waxy, pale gray. My mother, Brenda, was the one who finally broke the silence. Her head snapped up, and she looked at me. Her face wasn't sad. It wasn't apologetic. It was twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. You, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. This is your fault. I just stared at her. I couldn't even process the words. You did this, she screamed, taking a step toward me. You hid your money, you hid that vineyard, you let him do this, you set your own brother up. Brenda, calm down, Uncle Kevin said, standing up. No, she yelled, whirling on him. She did, she knew, she's cruel, she's always been cruel. She's right, Aunt Deborah said, her voice shaking, but finding its strength. You could have stopped this. Olivia, you could have told us. Why would you hide your success from your own family? It's unnatural. And just like that, the entire narrative shifted. The switch was flipped. In the span of 30 seconds, Brandon was no longer a criminal who had committed multiple felonies. He was a victim, and I was the perpetrator. I looked at their faces, one by one. The confusion was gone, replaced by a new, unifying certainty. They were all nodding. Yes, it was my fault. I had trapped him. It was a strange thing to watch. It was the moment I finally understood. They had heard the facts, but the logic would never compute for them. They couldn't, because they were reacting from a place of familial entitlement. It's a toxic mindset I'd been reading about, but I'd never seen it so clearly. In this kind of system, the family unit operates like a communal pot. In their minds, my $4.2 million bonus wasn't my money, it was a family resource that I was hoarding. My vineyard wasn't my property, it was an asset I had selfishly stolen from the collective. My refusal to share wasn't me setting a boundary, it was me stealing from them. So, in their twisted logic, my brother's fraud wasn't really a crime. It was just his clumsy, desperate attempt to take back what was rightfully theirs. And by exposing him, I wasn't defending myself. I was destroying the family. We're going to lose everything, Brandon whispered, his voice cracking. My house? Heather. You're not going to lose anything. Brandon, I said, my voice empty of all emotion. You'll get your $3.6 million back from the court. Minus fees. I assume. I picked up my purse and my car keys from the end table. What you're going to lose, I said, looking him dead in the eye, is your clean record. And your freedom, depending on what the DA decides. You committed multiple felonies. Brandon, you forged a legal document. That's on you. I'm your sister, he pleaded, finally looking at me. He's your brother. My mother sobbed. A family doesn't press charges against family. On Deborah said, as if it were a law. A family doesn't steal houses from family. I shot back, but here we are. I walked to the front door. Olivia. Wait, my mother cried. You can fix this. Call your lawyer back. Tell her it was a misunderstanding. I turned at the door and looked at them all. A room full of people I had known my entire life, who had just celebrated the theft of my home. I'm going to my attorney's office now, I said. Then I'm going home, to my vineyard. The one that I own. The one that none of you will ever set foot in again. The grand reopening is canceled. The family wine label is not happening. Because it's mine. And it always was. I opened the door. You're destroying this family, my mother screamed. I walked out and didn't look back. The emergency hearing was 2 days later. The courtroom was packed. I sat with Ms. Hayes at one table, Brandon, Heather, and their terrified-looking lawyer sat at the other. My mother, Brenda, and Aunt Deborah were sitting in the front row, looking like they were at a funeral. Judge Alistair, who was famous for having zero patience for nonsense, walked in. He did not look happy. Ms. Hayes was methodical. She was brilliant. She presented the original 2017 deed, 7 years of paid property tax receipts, the bank records from my $4.2 million tech bonus, and the signed affidavits from 2 separate court-certified handwriting experts. Both experts confirmed that the letter of intent from Uncle Robert was, and I quote, a crude and obvious forgery. Judge Alistair looked over his glasses at Brandon's lawyer. Sir, did you verify any of this? Did you run a simple $30 title search before you filed a lawsuit to auction a $4.8 million property? The lawyer, who looked like he was about to be sick, and just stared at his desk. He was silent. The judge turned his gaze to my brother. Mr. Brandon, he said, his voice booming. Did you forge this letter? Brandon, to his credit, just sat there, gray-faced and silent. Judge Alistair slammed his gavel. The sound cracked through the room. The default judgment is vacated. The auction sale held by this court is declared null and void. Mr. Brandon's $3.6 million will be returned by the court, minus significant administrative fees and penalties. He looked at me. Ms. Olivia is and remains the sole, legal, and undisputed owner of the Redwood Creek Vineyard property. He wasn't done. Furthermore, he said, looking back at my brother with absolute disgust, this court finds that this entire lawsuit was filed fraudulently, with malicious intent, and based on manufactured, perjured evidence. I am referring this entire matter, he said, including the clear-cut case of forgery, to the district attorney's office for immediate criminal prosecution. This court is adjourned. It was over. Outside the courtroom, as Ms. Hayes and I were walking to the elevators. Heather ran at me. Her face was blotchy and swollen from crying. "Olivia, please," she begged, grabbing my arm. "You can't let them do this. He's your brother. Think of his children, our children. You're going to let their father go to prison." I stopped and looked at her. I pulled my arm from her grasp. "I'm not doing anything to his children." "Heather," I said, "their father is... He chose to commit multiple felonies. He chose to forge a document. He did this. Not me." I walked away, leaving her sobbing in the hallway, faced with a mountain of evidence. The district attorney's office offered Brandon a plea deal rather than waste taxpayer money on a long trial. He took it. 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, full restitution of all my legal fees, which came to $80,000, and a permanent, lifelong felon record. My mother and Aunt Deborah stopped speaking to me entirely. As far as they were concerned, I had destroyed the family over a misunderstanding. The only one who called was Uncle Kevin. He called me about 2 weeks after the hearing. "Hey, Liv," he said, his voice quiet. I just wanted to call. Your mother is... Well, she's telling everyone you trapped him. That you hid the vineyard on purpose, just to set him up. My ownership is public record." "Uncle Kevin," I said, tired. They just never bothered to look. "I know," he said. "I know. I checked the records myself. You bought that vineyard at 28. That's... hell. Kid. Good for you. Your Uncle Robert. He would have been damn proud of you." I teared up for the first time in a week. "Thank you, Uncle Kevin. You take care of yourself," he said, and hung up. Which brings me back to today. I stood on the patio of my vineyard, watching the sunset. Brandon had planned a party to celebrate his new life, his grand reopening. Instead, he had a felony record and was paying me $80,000 in restitution. The sheriff's cars that crunched up the gravel path, they weren't for me. They were for him. He had shown up, drunk and screaming, demanding to be let onto his property. They were here to serve him with the restraining order, plans of the lawn Hayes had filed. I watched them escort him, red-faced and yelling, off my land. And then, for the first time in months, there was silence. I turned, walked back to my tasting room, and poured myself a glass of my best Cabernet. It was mine. It always was. We're all fed a comforting lie as children. We're told, blood is thicker than water. But that's not the full quote. The full proverb is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means the bonds we choose, the covenants we make, are stronger than the family we're just born into. Sometimes, blood isn't a bond. It's a cage. Or in my case, it was a poison, seeping into the roots of everything I tried to build. It takes a terrifying amount of courage to amputate a part of your life, to walk away from the people who are supposed to love you, but the peace you find on the other side, that's unconditional. That's real. And it is worth the price.